to challenge your worldview.
Well, let's have a look at the founders of the New World after the flood, the sons of Noah, Ham, Shem and Japheth. Now, if you look at that map, you'll see there are three color-coded, three colors, the green representing Ham and his descendants, the Hamites. And if you notice, they mostly spread down from, obviously they came down from Ararat and through, partly through the Middle East, and mostly spreading through Africa. Some of them ending up in the southern peninsula of Arabia, but as we'll find out, also some of them went through into Samaria and through into parts of India as well.
I want to challenge your worldview. Now this is the globe, and again I have placed Jerusalem in the center of the world. Isn't this a nice map for India? What is up in the world? India is up in the world. As Indians, don't feel that you are down. That's something that the Europeans told you. Europe is up and India is down. Take the Jerusalem worldview and look at the maps that ancient Jews were using. And we saw Dr. Shalva quoting for the same scriptures. 1 King 9, 26, 28. King Solomon also built ships at Esion Geber, which is near Elah in Edom. On the shores of the Red Sea and Hiram sent this man sailors who knew the sea to serve in the fleet with Solomon's men. They sailed to Ophir and brought back 240 talents of gold, which they delivered to King Solomon. First King 10:22. For the king had at sea a navy of Tarshish, which is the navy of Hiram. Once in 3 years came the navy of Tarshish, bringing gold and silver, ivory, and apes and peacocks. It's all found on your coast. It's all found on the Konkan coast. Even sandalwood. You remember the sandalwood smuggler, Virapan? Everything is here. With reason, you can say Ophir, the biblical Ophir, is on this coast. Known places of the Bible. Zion, the center of the world. I shall dwell in Zion. Jerusalem is my city, the Jewish people are my people. Egypt, Cush, Babylon, Gog, Persia. But look how nice it is to say, I'm living up in the world. I'm living where the Jews had to sail up in the world, to trade with God, with gold, with silver, to find peacocks, your national bird. Solomon went down on this coast with his best ships, with his best sailors, to bring the best things that you have with him home to build the first temple of Jerusalem. Amazing.
Where was the land of Ophir, O-P-H-I-R, which is mentioned in the Bible.
Okay. Well, Thomas, this is the opportunity to understand how we can understand things. Number one is we go to the biblical text. Number two, we go to archaeology, and then we go to geography so that we can know what we can know. Ophir is in Genesis, in the 10th chapter of Genesis, which is considered to be the Table of Nations. Ophir is named as one of the sons of Yoktan. The book of Kings and Chronicles tells of a joint expedition to Ophir by King Solomon and Hiram out of Tyre. And it left from Ezion Geber, which is next to Elat on the Yam Suf. It's actually Etzin Geber is a seaport on the Yam Suf, which is now called the Gulf of Aqaba. In the Bible, it's the Red Sea crossing, but you know, Red Sea, Reed Sea, I don't care what you call it. In Hebrew, it is Yam Suf, only one body of water. And that is where they left from that port, that seaport, and went down to Ophir, okay? A later expedition by King Jehoshaphat failed when the ships were destroyed near the port at Etzin Geber. And so he was on his way down to Ophir, and the entire fleet was wiped out. Now, as far as on the archaeological record, in 1946, there was a pottery shard that was found in Tel Qasil, which is modern-day Tel Aviv, and this dated back to the 8th century before the Common Era, and it bore the ancient Paleo-Hebrew inscription, 30 shekels of gold from Ophir for Beth Horon. But, you know, okay, so we know it is reality, but yet its location still remained unknown. Now,
I want to challenge your worldview.
As you look, the whole room explodes.
יש היום השקה של אייפון 5 בארצות הברית. אני לא יודע מה זה אומר לכם, לי זה לא אומר הרבה, אני אישית משתמש של אנדרואיד, אני לא כל כך אוהב את אפל, אבל זה סיפור אחר.
Now, it's an interesting thing because it was there, from that time onwards, we'll find the son Nimrod, the son of Cush, is where empires first began. And we'll trace this through. Some scholars reckon that King Messiah-Kasher, in the king records of ancient Mesopotamia, could possibly be the Cush mentioned in Genesis. Now let's look at some of these Cushites as they spread into Sumeria and India, which you might be surprised about. King Sargon, an Assyrian from about 2100 BC, said something quite derogatory, but here we are, this is what he said. For 45 years, the kingdom I have ruled and the blackheads I have governed. He's referring to dark-skinned people and their dark curly hair. And basically what he's speaking about is the Cushites. And they were there before him, and he came and conquered them, and he set up an empire. We find from the book of Sothis, which is a record from the time of Pharaoh Amenhotep III, about 14th century BC. He speaks about the Ethiopians removing from the river Indus, which is the Indus Valley civilization, dark-skinned Dravidian people before the Aryans came later on. And they came from India and they settled in Egypt next to their cousins in Ethiopia. So we find some of these records there. Arrian, a 2nd century pagan historian, says the inhabitants of the Indus, that's the Indus Valley civilization, India, are in their looks and appearance not unlike the Ethiopians. Those upon the southern coast resemble them most. They who are to the north have a greater resemblance to the Egyptians. And of course, they still have a name today, the Hindu Kush. Anyone ever heard of that? It's a pass. Afghanistan, Pakistan, right through into India. It's a place where people went through the passes into India. And why was it called Hindu Kush? Well, it was the Indus Valley civilization, and it was Kush because the descendants of Kush in Genesis were the ones who went there. And that's very clear to us. So as you'll find is unraveled, we're dealing with real history. This is not some sort of mythology we're dealing with in the Bible in Genesis. quotation here by Professor William Albright, Dean of Biblical Archaeology, a man highly respected. And he said this about Genesis chapter 10, the Table of Nations. He says, it stands absolutely alone in ancient literature with no remote parallel even among the Greeks. The Table of Nations remains an astonishingly accurate document. It shows such remarkable modern understanding of the ethnic and linguistic situation in the modern world. In spite of all its complexity, the scholars never fail to be impressed with the author's knowledge of the subject. Certainly, my own personal research over the last 20 to 25 years has confirmed that. I've been really, there's so much more I could have brought in. I could have gone on for another hour because there's a lot more. Even genealogical tables of some of the pagan nations confirming things in the Genesis account. Some ancient records. And I've got tremendous respect for Genesis chapter 10. It's obviously a very ancient document we have in the Bible, and it's very accurate. But the question is, if Genesis chapter 10 is so accurate, what about Genesis chapter 9? What about 6 to 9 of the Noah's flood? What about the book of Genesis itself as a foundation for the Bible? Thank you very much indeed for listening tonight. In about 1400 BC, they obviously recollect even going back further than that. He's known as Japeti. And in the Hindu record, the Indian record, he has brothers called Shama, which is identified as Shem, or Kama, identified as Ham. And in the Hindu record, Kama was cursed by his father, Saturnian, if I can get the name, which is the Hindu version of Noah. And in the Hindu record, Kama was cursed by his father, Saturnian, if I can get the name, which is the Hindu version of Noah.
As far as geography, the Israelis, when they took the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt in the Six-Day War, they had a settlement near Sharm el-Sheikh, which is right down where the Gulf of Aqaba narrows down, and then it opens up into the larger, what is called the Red Sea today. And they built a city down there, the Israelis, and called the city Ophir, which is the Hebrew for toward Ophir, since its location was on the Gulf of Aqaba, Yom Suf, and it was on the route of King Solomon's ships that went down there. So, you know, that's all we know, unless there's somebody else that knows more about it.
I want to challenge your worldview.